Hi, so it's Greg Hensley again with Stone Edge Surfaces, and we're getting ready to stamp this little project out. So the last thing that I'm going to be able to put on my feet before I go put my application down is shoe-in spiked shoes. These have spikes at the bottom that let me be able to walk out into the actual product without getting my feet messy or bending down to my knees. And basically you just kick your feet right in them. And now I can walk on the project and I'm getting ready to pull material down. So I'm going to bring my material over. I'm going to dump my material down. I may use that little excess at the end here, but I'll set this over here. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to gauge my material out. I'm going to bring the chunks back first. And as you can see, I'm getting close to the edge. And I'll do the same thing over here in the center. Working efficiency is everything. Time is money, right guys? So make sure that you use quick movements. You're going to have some that slides over the edge. I'm getting it close out first, and then I'll get the whole thing out. So, now that I'm close, I can walk right back up into it. I can grab all that material that I have. Not going off the edge. Getting close. Come to the center. Do the same thing. Come along the last side. So before I finish this end up, I'm going to go ahead and take my smoother, go out there and smooth out that application, and then finish up this area right here. Now I have my craft tool smoother on a pole device. I'm going to stand up in the actual product, and now I can actually smooth off the material by holding a shallow pitch. Going back and forth, not leaving a huge amount of lines, just smoothing it off nicely. Notice how I keep a very shallow pitch to come back on there. So now I'm able to use either a concrete trowel or a pool trowel to finish off my area, like towards the end of the job. I don't have to wear my spikes anymore. I left a couple open areas in the corner in case you had something like that on your job. I'll show you what it's like just to put a little bit down there and retrowel that edge. So if you're towards the end of your job, and all I'm doing is putting it out the thickness that I need for that particular project, making sure that I don't diminish the thickness. Now, if it's over a sidewalk, using a pool trowel like this is great because you're gonna let just a minute amount slop over the side. But if you're inside of a room, then of course, you may use a square trowel and get right up into that corner if there's two walls right there and just kind of wedge it up in there. I'm cheating. I'm creating a corner right there, but and see that corner will slop that material right in there and create that nice fine edge that you're trying to create. So I'm back to my pool trowel because we're mimicking outside here. And that's pretty much it for that. Now, so if I had an area like down here where I had an open corner on a sidewalk, and just pick some of your excess material up. Okay? Keep your pitch. If you open the pores when you're going across, you're going to open the pores on the concrete. Keep the pitch of your trowel flat, and your pores will stay nice and closed. As you can see on the surface, I have some lines. There's no way around it. Do not overspend your time trying to get out every single line possible on an overlay. Because what are you getting ready to do with it? You're getting ready to mess it up. You're getting ready to give it a bunch of texture and grout lines. So don't think you got to get every little text, every little line out from troweling or using a Fresno to do that or a pool trowel to do that. You're going to stamp out those lines. Okay? I don't care how warm it is, what it's like outside. If you get on at the proper time, you'll always stamp out all of your actual trowel lines that you have created after screening the product. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a nice little wood grain border on it, is I want to clear out the end so I have a nice straight edge. So just taking any type of trowel, going along the actual end of the project, just to give myself a straight line by which to take my stamp and lay down. Now I'll get my stamp here, bring it over, and we'll lay down the wood stamper. All right, so we had laid our product, and now we were at the time where we're going to stamp. And the way that I know this is I do a thumb test. And basically I'm putting my thumb down on, and as long as nothing comes off on my thumb, I can either stamp by hand early, or I can stamp by walking on the product. And we're gonna use what we call shoe-ins with no spikes on them this time, and I'll grab those in just a minute. But first thing we're going to do, once we know it's time to stamp, we have to use a bubblegum release agent. I'm going to mist onto my stamp. We're going to mist onto the surface of the project, and I'm going to go ahead and mist fairly far out so that we can stamp the rest of our project now that it is ready as well. All right, so now we're going to use this wood stamp to give ourselves a wood border. We're going to go directly down on that line. And now that we've laid that down on there, now we can step onto this. Now you can see I'm just in my regular shoes, and I weigh about 200 pounds plus. So I've created now the texture. Now I'm going to leave that stamp down, but I want to show you I've already achieved some texture of the wood grain. If you want to see that, it's beautiful. I'm going to leave that stamp lay right there for a second while we take these other stamps. Grab my shoe-ins. These shoe-ins allow me to dissipate my weight out a little bit so I don't just pinpoint action down in the concrete and cause a divot. So I'll put my first stamp down and walk out on the actual concrete. Notice how I'm going back and forth like a typewriter. You'll hand me the next stamp. Thank you, sir. I'll put the next stamp right beside it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip my stamps. Now I can walk on this stamp without putting that tremendous line down in the concrete, as long as I pass over the underlying line. Notice how I'm staying about a ½ inch away from the actual edge. So now I can turn around I can pick this stamp straight up in the air, put it back down, I can flip, and now I'm walking on the stem. As you can see, it's leaving all that beautiful texture skin that we're going to then come back and hand carve the surface into a flagstone pattern after we put a base color down. What's nice about having a skin is I can go almost anywhere over the project that I want without hindering any look of it, because it's all the same texture. I can overlap, so don't feel like you have to go right next door to each stamp. That's why we do overlap it, so we make sure we get all texture. Flip it. We're almost done. Now, I left this small area open here, and I left this small area open here. There's a small area right here that doesn't have a huge amount of texture. Some people will have a small little texture skin, about this size, of the same texture they may carry around with them if they want to achieve texture in those areas, or you can leave it alone, because not all stones have texture all over the entire stone. So when I have small areas like that, sometimes we'll just leave them, and when the hand carve is created, it'll blend right in. So there's no need to go over every little one to create texture unless it's easily accessible and not time consuming. So when you're lifting a stone edge stamp skin up in the air, you want to make sure, because one, we have no handles on our particular skins for a coarse texture, you want to make sure that you get your hands on both sides, work them to the middle, straight up, straight down. Whenever you're putting a stamp down, straight up. Don't move them side to side or you'll blemish the surface. Easily fixable, but let's just stay away from doing that anyway. Okay, so when you're stamping out a project with stone edge pro stamp material and using our pro stamps, you know, when you have a border like this, I hear it all the time from individuals that will say, well, right next to the actual wood grain, you didn't get texture. Well, you know what? I may not have gotten texture for 1/2 inch, 3/4, but we're talking about projects that are thousands of square feet big. And nobody's ever going to notice, one, that you don't have texture right up against that actual wood grain. And when you don't have texture right up against that wood grain, or another grain, whatever it may be, another texture, it stands out. So don't kill yourself trying to get stamps right up against it. I did the best I could. I get my feet in there. I stamp as close as I can. If it's a grout joint, then I would use a grout roller or a grout tool to finish out that line right up to that actual border. But if it's just texture, I will stamp as close as I can and let it be, and let efficiency work with me, not against me. So if you want to separate your border a little bit from your other texture, sometimes you can go in there with an actual tool like this. You can use a trowel, and all I'm doing is just kind of creating a little bit of depth. Anytime I create a shadow, that's about as much depth as I can create. But you can see how it really separates that border, and it gives you the feel that the wood was placed in there nicely. So now, as you can see, we have textured out the entire surface. We've given ourselves a wood border, but I still have all of this mess of material around the edge of my sidewalk or my driveway. So now's the time to come in with something like a pull trowel or a margin trowel, or you know, something that you can sharply cut off the material. And instead of having to use an edger, but I can just come right down here and slice it off. Pick up those pieces of debris when they get hard, put them in a bucket, and discard them. And there you have it. So if you remember, when we applied the Stone Edge Pro Stamp material, after we were finished stamping, we sliced around the edges for the cleanliness of a sidewalk or a driveway. Now we're at the point to begin our coloring system, and I could leave it until after I color, but without getting any more moisture on there, maybe causing it to get a little bit more soggy. While it's hard, you can go ahead and take those pieces and just pop them right away from your sidewalk or your driveway. As you can see, it leaves you that nice chamfered edge, which you can come back and even close up with a carving tool if you felt need be. If not, just pick up the chunks, put them in a bucket, and discard accordingly.